Hello again. This tutorial is a continuation of a previous tutorial on the subject of channels. If you don't understand channels or you're not sure what they are, I'd suggest you watch that tutorial before you start watching this one. Now, in the previous tutorial we were talking about the way that Photoshop composites an RGB image using three channels, red, green and blue channels, which are doing specific jobs at controlling the amount of red, green and blue pigmentation in the image. And we also were talking about the way that Photoshop represents the information in these channels, or the job it's doing, using a black and white or grayscale image. And specifically it represents the amount of red information, for example, in this red channel, by the luminance values, the black and white or the darkness and lightness shadows, the values in the image that we're looking at. So the lightest pixels, the lightest areas of this image here, are letting through the most red light, and the same would apply for the green and the blue. And the darkest areas are hiding the most color information. So, for example, in the blue image here, the dark areas have the least blue in them. Right, so it's important to understand two things. The first is that this information that's being represented to you here in Photoshop as an image can be treated as an image. You can literally edit it the way you would edit any other image. I could, for example, get hold of a black paintbrush here, and I could literally paint on the red channel. I don't know why I'd ever want to do this, but just to show you it can be done. If I switch over to the RGB, you can see that I've actually created a hole in that channel, and which other pigment's showing through. And I could apply a filter to it, I could blur it, I could sharpen it, and I could do other things to it. Now, it's very unlikely you'd ever want to do that to an actual image, because it would cause it to degenerate in fairly horrible ways. But I could also make a copy of the red channel here, drag it down, for example, in the channels palette, drop it on the new layer icon here, or new channel icon in this context, let go of it, and I now have a red copy. Now this is no longer controlling red information, it's literally just taken that information and put it into a ordinary channel. Well, we call these sort of custom channels alpha channels, by the way, that's the name for them. And you can create these from scratch, or you can create them by copying other channels. We'll come back to that in a second. I'm just going to delete that. The other thing that's important to understand is that channels have special properties that other images don't. They have the ability to select or to hide areas of an image. And again, I could take one of these channels, let's say the red channel again, and if I move my mouse down to the bottom of the channels palette, I have this little icon on the left here which says load channel as selection. If I click on that, you can see that what's happened here is that all the lightest pixels in the image have been loaded up. The darkest ones are probably only half selected, and the grey ones sort of semi-selected. So that has become a selection, just the way I would create a selection if I used the lasso tool or the marquee tool or any other selection tools. This, I think, will become a little clearer when we use it the other way around, when we actually start with a selection and then convert it into a channel. So let's try that next. So I'm going to switch over here to a plain white empty document as before. And let's imagine a situation where we wanted to create our own channel. Or let's put it another way, we wanted to save a selection, which is normally the situation in which you would create a channel. So I grab hold of my marquee tool here, I make a selection, and I go to the select menu at the top here, and I say I want to save the selection, please. I click on that. Now when this opens up, you notice the first thing it's asking me is what document I want to save it in. I can save it in the same document, the one I'm working on, Untitled 1. And it's offering to make a new channel for me. And down here at the bottom, all my options are grayed out except for the option to make a new channel. So let's do that. Let's actually make a new channel. I'm going to call this one Alpha, which if you remember is the name, sort of generic name given to custom channels, and I'm going to click OK. Now when I go over here and I look at the channel that's been created for me, because that's what's happened, it has actually created a new channel for me. I'm just dropping the selection there. You can see that the area that I had selected with my marquee tool here is white. That's because all the pixels inside that selection are fully selected. And if you remember from the previous tutorial, anything that's fully selected in a channel is white. All the areas outside the marquee, which were deselected, were not selected, are represented as black, plain black. So we're getting here a very stark and very simple version of what we had before, a simple square selection. And you'll notice that that selection does not appear in my image at all unless I choose to make it appear. Now I can make it appear by simply loading up the channel, and you can do this by going to the select menu again and choosing load selection. It asks you which channel you want to load. You can say alpha channel, and there's my little marquee tool square back again. Or I could do what I did the previous time, just make sure I've got the channel selected and then click down here on this little icon, and there's my channel again. Or there's a third way of doing this, and possibly the most useful way to learn, which is a keyboard shortcut. For this to happen, you don't even need to have the channel turned on. You can just have it visible to you. Hold down the command on a Mac or the control key, and then just simply click on the icon, and again it will load it up as a selection. Right, so remembering what I said earlier about the fact that this is actually an image as well as a channel. You can treat channels exactly the way you would treat images. I could, for example, go over here, go back to black and white again, switch to white, and I could get a paintbrush. Where's my paintbrush gone? There it is. And I could paint on it. So I could put a sort of, for example, a white feathery area, or add a white feathery area to it. Now when I load it up, click again, you'll notice that it's loaded the white area up, or the sort of semi-grey area in that case. If I change my opacity down, let's change it to sort of 50%, and drop my selection one more time. Make my brush a bit smaller and paint a sort of grey area on that, and then load it up again. You'll notice that the marching ants don't appear. That's because this grey area drops below the threshold for marching ants. Marching ants only really recognize things that are at least 50% white. This is obviously less than 50% white. Nevertheless, that is selected. You can't see the marching ants with that selected, and I can prove it to you by going back to the RGB channel here, choosing a color. Let's choose purple, and just filling it. You can see that the actual area there that wasn't represented by marching ants is there, and has been filled with a color. One of the great properties of using channels, and in the other context, which we'll talk about in a further tutorial, using masks, is that you can make selections which are much subtler than you would ever be able to make with any of the selection tools, the lasso or the marquee or any of the other tools. You can create shades of selection and therefore do sort of shades of work to them with a channel that you could not do with any other selection tool. Right, so that is how you create an alpha channel. And if I saved this document in format supported alpha channels, which would be either Photoshop document or a TIFF document, and I came back to it a week later or a year later, I could reload that selection if I wanted to and use it again. So that information is stored in the channels palette as long as I want it to be there. The only way I can get rid of it is literally by physically deleting it like that. Now it's gone. So that is, if you want to think about it this way, it might make life a little simpler. a channel is a piece of stored information. When you actually put that information to work in an image, then it becomes other things, specifically a mask. You can use it to hide things, or you can use it as a live selection, but in its dormant form it is a channel.